have finished America's Story 1 by MasterBooks, so let's talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, and everything in between. Hi, I'm Jennifer. Thank you so much for joining me. Welcome to my channel. Welcome back to my channel. I really appreciate you're here. On this channel, we talk about all things homeschool. I really like doing curriculum reviews and comparisons, and also I like cooking, so I've started throwing in some recipes. So if any of that interests you, please leave me a comment down below and tell me what about those three things interest you, and maybe we can do more of that. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the feedback. So America's Story 1 by MasterBooks. Let's start out by saying we really liked it. Well, we liked most of it. So I really like the way that the story was told. I think that Angela O'Dell did a great job in really pulling you into it and making it be a story that you are taking part of. You know, she talks about you being in the room when Patrick Henry says, "Give me liberty or give me death." She talks about you deciding what type of wagon you're going to take when you are traveling across the country. So that is really good. I like the way she brings it in. We purchased the book, the textbook, the teacher's guide, and then we also purchased the timeline. So let's talk about the teacher's guide. The teacher's guide obviously provides you with your schedule. I used it a lot for the notes of different things that I wanted to cover. They also give individual worksheets. These we did not use very much. There are quite a few sketchings, which we're not hugely into drawing in this family. There is a narration, or a timeline, sorry. There's a timeline for almost every chapter. Not into a lot of writing around here. And then there's also some other activity pages, which by this point we had already moved past these. So I can't even really provide a lot of information for what activities are towards the end of the teacher's guide, because after probably the first 6 weeks, we just stopped using the teacher's guide. They don't have tests and quizzes, which I'm a test and quiz kind of gal, but we did find other things. I may become a project kind of gal because we had so much fun with the projects that we did. Speaking of projects, in the back of the teacher's manual, there is some suggested special projects. We didn't use any of those as special projects. They also have review sheets. I did do the first 2 review sheets, and they were really kind of hard. I mean, some of it wasn't, but it was just not for us. It just didn't work. So we'll talk, I'll get into the things that we did do, but the teacher's guide was not something that we really liked. Now, they do have a timeline, which is a colored timeline. It has different pieces that you can cut out and you can utilize, or in the back of your book, this is the teacher's manual. Oh, this is the teacher's manual again, but in the back of the book, they do have black and white ones that you can use or make copies of. Really quickly, I'll talk about the timeline. So the timeline is an additional purchase. It gives you the pictures in color for your timeline. So I don't have the wall space to do an entire wall timeline, and so I utilized these boards from the dollar store. Now, if I had to do it over again, I would come up with a better solution for this, because I have 3 boards now just for America's Story 1. And the first board you can see is really blank because we didn't have that much that happened between 1510 and 1580 on our timeline. Now, the last board is really full, and we had a hard time fitting everything in exactly where it was supposed to be for the year. So I do not recommend using those whiteboards. If you have room, then I think that a wall obviously be the best scenario for this timeline. Since we didn't utilize the teacher's guide and all of the activities that are included in the teacher's guide, I had to bring in some other things. And so one of my daughter's favorite activities was this American History Comics book. I have quite a few of the different scenarios. We went on the expedition with Lewis and Clark in comic book format. We met Paul Revere, so it was fun. And what happens is this little guy right here, he travels back from the future, and so he has a lot of really funny comments, and so that engaged my daughter. So she thought that was funny. So this was a cute little book. I'll link down below the information on how to get any of these pieces that I talk about, but this one was definitely a fun little comic book. I did bring in 3 DK books. I just love DK books. And so the first one is the American History Encyclopedia. This is just gorgeous. They have a lot of information as well as the pictures. You know, this is a great book. Secondly, we brought in the Win on Earth book. I really like this one for the colonies. So this talked about colonial America. It showed what was going on in the different areas of the country. I do wish that America's Story 1 would have beefed up their discussion on the colonies themselves. So we brought in some more information about the colonies. We did it through a variety of ways, anything from, you know, just looking things up on the internet, doing some Teachers Pay Teachers downloads for the 13 colonies, and then just researching the different colonies, because even though the colonies are mentioned in America's Story, I really wish that some of them were, you know, the more information was provided about some of them. Like, for example, Georgia. I mean, there was a very specific reason that Georgia was founded. And so I just wish that that had been brought out more in America's Story 1, but that's part of the beauty of this living history, is that the information where we wanted to dig deeper, we had time to do that, and where we just wanted to read it and move on, we could do that as well. We could still get a general knowledge about the subject and move on, and so that worked out really well with us being able to bring in a little bit more information for the colonies. America's Story 1 has this timeline at the top of each chapter, and it gives you a little bit of information about what was going on in that chapter. Sometimes it just mentions that a new president was elected, and so I really wanted to get more information about the individual presidents. So we started a little President's Notebook. And I purchased these stickers. And so what we do is, for each president, every president has its page. She puts the sticker, their name, when they were born, died, the dates of their presidency, one interesting fact about them, and then one thing that they are noted for. The third DK book we brought in is The Presidents. This is her primary resource for where she looks up the information for her presidential notebook. Here's the one on William Henry Harrison. So, interesting fact about William Henry Harrison: he gave the longest inauguration speech and he had the shortest term as presidency. Just love the Who Was books, and so we brought some of those in as well. Now, I assigned a few of these as book report books. It was nice to be able to have them and flow with our history lessons, but then also have them as the book report books. And then we also did a couple as read alouds. So we brought in Who Was Paul Revere? Who was George Washington? What was the Underground Railroad? And what was the first Thanksgiving? We actually read What Was the First Thanksgiving on our way to our trip to Jamestown. So we were very fortunate, and I know that this isn't going to happen every time, but we were fortunate that we were able to go visit Jamestown, Yorktown, Williamsburg, and Monticello. So that was awesome that we could do that. Now, that was our family vacation, so that's not something we'll be able to do all the time, but it was just so wonderful that it worked out that way. Of course, my daughter had to do a presentation on what she learned because we had to do something to replace the tests and quizzes, and so I'll link that video here. The other thing that we did to replace the tests and quizzes were history bowls, and those are kind of our version of a Jeopardy. And so here's a couple of pictures, and I'll let you figure out who won. Who do you think won our 2 history bowls that we had? I mentioned previously that we did not do the writing narrations, but I wanted to still have writing involved in our history. And so I found this Writing Trails in American History, and it worked out amazing. Did approximately 6 of these throughout America's Story 1, and what they are is just, there is some information about Paul Revere. You get to choose a new title, then you look up the definitions of a few keywords, then you look up synonyms, then you get to outline the story based on these sentences, and finally you have to rewrite the story utilizing your new words that you looked up and your outline. And so that was great, and it gave us some good writing practice, but it wasn't so overwhelming. Something else that we brought into our homeschool for this was Mr. Betts. And so I loved Mr. Betts parodies. We sang them so many times. Jamestown and the Pilgrims were our 2 favorite. I will link my playlist on this up here. Now, I do need to note, Mr. Betts is a high school teacher, so make sure that you watch the videos prior to just pulling them out. You need to make sure that they are appropriate for your students. Now, one of the final things that we brought in was the American Revolution History Pockets by Evan-Moor. Have you ever tried these? I love these. These are great. So within the history pockets, there is overview, the cause, the famous patriots, a soldier's life, battles, spies and traitors, and the birth of a nation. And so those were so much fun for us to do. We did all of them for the American Revolution. I think my daughter's favorite one was the Boston Tea Party, where she got to glue tea onto the paper. But these are really great because they reinforce the material, they're hands-on, and so we like that a lot. The last supplement that we brought in was the interactive 3D maps in American history. We did not do all of these. There are quite a few, as you can see. But what we did do, I really like the one on the Erie Canal where it talks about the steps. And so you get to move this and it tells what each step does. And then you cut the paper to show how the barges moved and where the horses moved to pull the barges along. And so that was a lot of fun stuff, fun things to do. In short, we really liked America's Story 1. I enjoyed it. It does have 28 chapters. Each chapter takes approximately 1 week because you have 2 days of reading within the chapter and then a couple of days for your activities. We did spread it out because sometimes the history pockets and things took more than just 1 or 2 days to do. And so we spread it out somewhat. MasterBooks recommends it to be a 36-week course for 4 to 5 days. I'm not quite sure that it really will take that long. It did not take us that long to go through it, where we even brought in the additional information. Again, we did not follow the teacher's guide for this, so I don't know if following the teacher's guide would have really spread it out to that full 36 weeks. Based on some of the people that I've talked to, it didn't take them 36 weeks either, and it definitely did not take them 45 minutes a day. But, you know, everyone is different, and it really depends on what rabbit trails you go down. What do you bring in? What else do you want to research, and what else do you want to know about? My final thoughts are, we really liked America's Story 1. We appreciated the way that Angela Odell put it together. We appreciated the information that was brought to life, and I love the fact that it was from a Christian viewpoint, and she did a great job of interweaving that throughout the entire book, and so I'm very thankful for that. If you have any questions about this review or any of the materials I brought in, please just leave a comment down below. If you like these types of reviews, give us a thumbs up and we will continue to do them. I hope that you have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you next time.